Take a look at these photos from police. Officers say this man shot and killed another man. This all happened in the parking lot of Best Buy on Zaffarano.
I never thought that Santa Fe would be worse than Albuquerque. The vandalism, the drugs, the violence.
Santa Fe is not what it used to be.
With these homeless people, take the wallets, take the purses out of people. I have seen it with my own eyes. And we don't have a knife. I mean,
no tenemos manera de defender en el momento.
There's no way for us to defend ourselves.
31-year-old Mariano Romero is accused of shooting a Sonic employee while he was bringing drinks to a car at the restaurant on Cerrillos Road in Santa Fe back on July 25th.
So for us to think that human trafficking isn't happening in Santa Fe or isn't happening here or there or whatever, fools. We're fools if we think that's not the case.
48% increase in homelessness.
After a shooting at an area Walmart, police were called to the store on Hedera Drive just after 6 o'clock this morning.
They're just at they're being incarcerated just for a short time, and then they get out, and then what happens?
Homeless people taking over a home. There was a home back there that was set on fire.
The brutal murder left police and the entire community in shock.
He has attacked me. He has thrown stones into my car. And I do have a lot of clients that are police officers. And they themselves say, we cannot do anything because of the laws. They tied our hands. We're anti.
I'm afraid for my daughter to even stop at the gas station to put gas. I'm afraid for my wife to even stop and put gas. I've been robbed twice from my vehicle, all of my tools twice out of my vehicle, over $42,000 in equipment.
And Tyler has told me, oh, Mom, you don't even have to buy drugs here. You can just go to a corner and ask anybody, and you'll get whatever you want.
Live here, poop here, do whatever they want, take drugs here, and wherever they want to be. And the current political will is don't touch them.
Santa Fe police are searching for a suspect in a deadly carjacking, about 5'8", bald with hazel eyes. If you see him, do not approach him.
I talked to the police department and they said that their hands are tied. They go over there, they arrest somebody, they do the paperwork. By the time paperwork's done and the ink's dried up, people are back out in the street and they're dealing with the same guys over and over and over.
What if it was your granddaughter? What if it was your grandson? One of your family members, your little ones that don't know better, go pick up a needle and it's a toy.
We got a dilemma. I'm an avid cyclist. I cycle all your trails all over the city, every single one of them, and we have a problem.
Madam Clerk.
Erin Borrego.
I'm deeply concerned about the state of our city. I've become a victim of multiple vehicle thefts and home invasions. The rise in crime and lack of effective action to address it have left many of us feeling unsafe and frustrated. Your lack of leadership on public safety is a serious problem. People are not just disappointed, they are angry and fearful. Our city needs a mayor who will listen, take decisive action, and restore safety and security. It's time to admit your failures and step down.
Y aparecen como zombies.
If you notice, they look like zombies.
Siendo un pueblo, un mundo cada vez más a lo que sale en las películas.
We're turning this town, this place, into a zombie place.
Xylazine is known as the zombie drug. It's an animal tranquilizer. They use it to tranquilize horses, cattle, and they call it the zombie drug because it causes necrosis of the human flesh. It rots the human flesh.
Do you think that the perception and reality are one and the same with rising crime in Santa Fe, or it's not that bad out there?
So I will tell you, the reality is it is probably a lot worse than even you realize, and the only people that truly know how bad it is are the cops out on the street that are responding to those type of calls.
Victor Daniel was loved to the fullest and always gave his all. His kindness was never to be mistaken for weakness. His calmness not to be mistaken for acceptance. His silence never be mistaken for ignorance. Victor took pride in helping and protecting others by sharing his experience and knowledge. Victor was very caring and touched people's hearts with his charm and personalities. His beautiful smile and laugh lifted up any bad energy from a room. We could truly feel his happiness flow through the atmosphere when he was around. His love for family and friends ran deeper than the ocean, and he was always ready to be someone's hero. For over 20 years, he gave us a lot of joy and happiness. You know, we are so deeply sorry that this ill society poisoned you. We are so deeply sorry and ashamed that your life was cut short by an evil coward, a monster. When you were brutally shot 10 times, as your father, I wish I could have taken the pain and suffering from you. It bothers us every day. We are sorry that you were trapped by fake friends. Victor Daniel was such a smart and wonderful son. The world was a better place with him in it. All of us are missing you forever. We know that you are watching over us, and we will see you in heaven, our son Tonino. I finally got my son a headstone, as big as I was allowed to do it. You know, a nice headstone, a polished black granite from India, you know, with all his pictures on there. This nobody can take away from me. Victor Daniel, you know, I miss you, and, you know, you're looking out for me, and you sent me a beautiful girl, a Christmas baby, a year ago. But, you know, you get a secondary loss, you know, when you lose a kid. You know, it's strange, you know, people don't want to associate with you. They think it's your fault, losing a kid. So sorry. You know, I want to ask society, you know, how do you protect your son when you're working at your workplace? 10-hour days, and you don't know what's going on out there. There is a saying, you know, there's a saying, right? It takes a village to raise your kid. But you know, this village murdered my kid.
Data show that Santa Fe crime is, in most categories, going down compared to last year, and that's a good thing. But the feeling, the emotion, the perception is that we are having more crime, and so we have to go out and work with folks. Santa Fe Mayor Alan Weber, August 8th, 2024. I know that it seems like crime is up, but is it really? I mean, some of what you perceive is because of your experiences, and your experiences taint you to what's possibly just normal. I mean, crime is up all over the country, isn't it? And do we think we're any better? Do we think we're any different? This is just the new normal. This is just the way it is now. And actually, quite frankly, things are okay. Things aren't that bad. I think things are actually pretty good. But are they?
Normalization refers to the social processes through which ideas and actions come to be seen as normal and become taken for granted or natural in everyday life. There are different behavioral attitudes that humans come to accept as normal, such as the grief for a loved one, avoiding danger, or the eventual acceptance of criminal acts in society.
I grew up in Santa Fe. I went to grade school at Carlos Gilbert, junior high at Capshaw, and high school at Santa Fe High. I have family and friends here, and a whole lot of memories. But I look around and things feel different. I feel like a stranger in my own community, like it's not my city anymore. There's drugs being sold up and down Cerrillos Road,
windows broken at Denny's and other restaurants. And then I have to ask myself, do I still feel safe here? Or even more than that, would our city council feel safe eating at a restaurant off of Cerrillos Road? I don't know, maybe it's the potholes, the increase in homelessness, or just a blatant disregard for private businesses or even people when it comes to crime. Cars are being broken into. But then again, I have to stop myself and think, is this the new normal? Poetic Eastern philosopher Jindal Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society."
That must have been brutal for you as a mom.
It is to watch your child. This brilliant kid, he was, oh my God, smart. Everybody loved him. Everybody would say, oh, Tyler's your son. Everyone, I mean, that knew him in town. Oh, I met your son Tyler. What a good kid. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always a good, good kid. But once he got into the drugs here, he was doing heroin. He and his girlfriend were doing heroin and meth, and he graduated to fentanyl. And he was sleeping behind the Elks Club and going through garbages, and he was homeless.
So maybe he had a problem before, but once he moved to Santa Fe, it went from, whatever it was that you weren't even necessarily aware of to something that was just out of control.
Out of control. And Tyler has told me, oh, Mom, you don't even have to buy drugs here. You can just go to a corner and ask anybody, and you'll get whatever you want. Whatever.
My background is that I was with DEA for 31 years. Mm-hmm. And I worked abroad for about 18 years, Mexico, Colombia. I was the special agent in charge of the Caribbean division, which included Suriname and Guyana and French Guiana on the South American continent. And then I was the special agent in charge of the San Diego division. Mm-hmm. And then I was chief of international operations in charge of every office around the world. Plus I did multinational operations. The biggest one involved 36 countries. And then after the fall of the Taliban in 2001, I developed an operation where I actually brought in the Chinese and the Russians. So, I have a pretty long career.
Very extensive.
We're targeting our community, and we're trying to target our community with information. We're not trying to be the biggest fish out there. We're trying to talk about what's happening in New Mexico and Santa Fe, our home, and, talking to so many people that we've talked to, one of the things that does keep coming up is just the crazy rise in drug use, and just how some of these drugs these days are just like so bad. Mm-hmm. They just hook people. What can you tell us in general about that here?
The issue let me start. We have a major problem here in Santa Fe, mm-hmm. as well as throughout New Mexico, because we have very powerful cartels in Mexico that have evolved through time. You're not going to be able to counter this problem by being reactive. You have to be proactive. The politicians, for the most part, come in, from Washington, and, unfortunately we have a bunch of idiots, and they come in and they talk about the problem. They have a town hall meeting, they say, we got a problem. We got a lot of overdose deaths, from fentanyl, from heroin, what have you. And they leave. They never offer a solution.
Because we see, so in Espanol, it's become intergenerational.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Where kids are growing up watching their parents and their grandparents do drugs. Mm. So if we could just, we have I can do whatever want to wand to fix this, we would have to start off in grade school, ensuring that these kids know what drugs can do to them. Now, how that works, I have no clue. But just to really instill the destruction that drugs, and alcohol for that matter, can do to individuals.
I've walked in, it was like a Tuesday, I think it was like December 23rd or December 22nd. All the kids are coming in to get their gingerbread house, whatever, mom's coming in to buy eggnog or stuff for the roast. And there's a woman right in front of the business. It's like 2:00 and she's smoking like the blue pills on a tinfoil. Just in broad daylight. I mean, this is not even a thought to go behind a dumpster and do the drugs. I've watched the drugs be sold out of that subway. And it's not just, so that's what I'm saying, it's not just the plaza, it's not just downtown. It's in our hotels, it's in our grocery stores, it's in the Ross, you know what I mean? It's in the mom and pop shop, and we're all fighting it, but we don't know how to come together for a solution and have somebody hear us, because it's just denial.
But the drugs are out of control here.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the key pivotal things, is that drugs and drug abuse and where that leads produces criminals and produces homeless people almost out of whole cloth.
We have a major thoroughfare going through town. We have I-25. It's a conduit from the southern border all the way up to wherever the drugs need to go. At the end of that trail, wherever those drugs are going, whether it be heroin, whether it be fentanyl, whatever, cocaine, meth, there's always the end user. There's always somebody at the end of that transaction, that trafficking. And it's our families. It's our children. It is our moms, our dads, our parents. That is the platform of why the drug world is so prevalent in this state, in this country. And taking a position of it's just another part of life, well, it's a cop-out.
If I didn't bring up fentanyl in this discussion, then I wouldn't be valid in a lot of my insights, because I see that, we smell it in our you smell it downtown. You smell it downtown. You go into one of these, commonplace malls where there's a bathroom or whatnot. It's disgusting.
I've seen some people that, I know firsthand, many of them in our community, and it seems like this fentanyl and some other drugs are just so addictive these days. They're just so hooked. They will allow their baby to starve. They will allow their baby to be born in withdrawal. And you see these people become homeless. And you see how tragic that is on so many levels. And you see it on such a large scale. It's just frustrating to see it get worse. And especially and I'm sorry, but especially with our city leaders, some of them, when you ask them, they say, well, it's not as bad as it seems, because you've seen this, and so this is your experience, and so you're maybe a little tainted because it's not that bad.
Well, I look at it as being bad if you have one individual that died from a drug overdose. That's bad. But when you have a lot of consumption, especially of deadly drugs like fentanyl, that does cause a lot of the homelessness, but even more so the neglect of children, and the children living with the parents, in these tents, not having enough food, and being neglected, because when people are addicted to drugs, they don't even care for themselves, their hygiene, their health. So how are they going to care for a child? And that's a tragic situation. And I find it very tragic when you have city leaders that are saying, oh, it's not as bad as you think it is, that is basically telling you that they are not going to make an effort to take this problem head on. So they deny, and then when it becomes a crisis, they try to react. But that's like trying to react to a 12-car crash and trying to pull people out of the burning cars. It's not going to really help you.
Yeah.
But the vagrants go out and they commit crimes and they do drugs, and Nathaniel comes here and continually smokes crack and does fentanyl. So they climb up on my patio and they steal my string lights that illuminate my patio. The old school light bulbs, they break them, and whatever's inside, it gets them high. So they come and they smoke fucking light bulbs.
Did you know that?
Well, I know that it's poisonous to hit somebody with one of those halogen lights or whatever it is.
Yeah. So and it's kind of like, it's an old, they're old school light bulbs with a little wire in there, and whatever that powder is, I guess it gets them high and everything.
Well, the thing is that New Mexico is pretty much being impacted by the Mexican cartels, just like the entire country. So what is happening is through the evolution of the cartels, who originally started dealing with marijuana, heroin, and then in the 1980s, you started to see a shift of cocaine trafficking from the Caribbean to Mexico, because we were hitting the cartels in Colombia very hard. So they started to look at another route, and they figured, okay, let's look at Mexico, because we speak the same language, and they already had existing pipelines into the United States for marijuana and also heroin. So that gave the Mexican cartels a big shot in the arm. Then, when the pharmaceutical companies started to basically flood the United States with Oxycontin and other drugs like Purdue Pharma, that started the opioid crises. And then in 2010, they started to shift from Oxycontin and pharmaceutical drugs into heroin, because it was cheaper. 3 years later, they started to move into fentanyl. And the Mexican cartels are the major supplier for fentanyl to the United States, which includes Mexico. And they've started to shift away from plant-based drugs like opium poppies that produce heroin, and then also marijuana, because synthetic drugs are much easier to produce. They don't get eradicated, by fumigation efforts, so they don't run a great risk, and they're bringing in the precursor chemicals from China, and they bring it in by maritime ship into the Pacific ports, such as Lázaro Cárdenas in Michoacán, and then Manzanillo in the state of Colima, and then also Veracruz on the Atlantic side. The labs, a lot of people here in the United States call them super labs. Not super labs. All they are is a metal tub where they mix the precursor chemicals, and they use a stick or a shovel to mix them. So they produce this, with very little effort, very little money, and then what they do is they make counterfeit pills, like oxycodone. And then, it's very easy to smuggle them into the United States. But one of the major problems is that the Mexican cartels, primarily the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, are mixing everything with fentanyl. So that is one of the main reasons that here in the United States we're suffering from about 70,000 deaths just from fentanyl
So
alone.
from ecstasy to cocaine, it's being mixed with fentanyl as well.
Yeah. And the other thing too, that we're starting to see a huge problem because now they're mixing xylazine with fentanyl. And xylazine is known as the zombie drug. It's an animal tranquilizer. They use it to tranquilize horses, cattle, and they call it the zombie drug because it causes necrosis of the human flesh. It rots the human flesh, which leads to amputations.
Were the Russians calling it crocodile, or is that a separate?
That's a separate drug, but this one they call it short for tranquilizer. So that's the big problem.
Shooting up drugs.
Yeah, behind the local Walgreens.
So I guess, what have you learned about crime since we started to look into this problem? Do you think, at least from who we've talked to, that there is an actual crime problem in Santa Fe, or everything is pretty much normal?
Well, it's people who haven't been hit by crime yet kind of just want to, I guess, ignore it. It's not affecting me until it does.
So there's two things, right? There's the perception and then there's the reality. Perception is important because you talk to a lot of people. They've been victimized by crime. Areas that seemed safe a few years ago aren't so safe anymore. Mm-hmm. And then you have these anecdotal stories from people that are from the community or even passing through that say that Santa Fe, or at least Cerrillos Road, looks. I was working on a film, and one of the actresses, their hotel was on Cerrillos Road, and she said that it looked worse than LA.
Wow.
Right? So this is somebody that's from California that was staying off of Cerrillos Road, who said that she felt like she was in more danger off of Cerrillos Road than in Los Angeles with all the crime and the homelessness there.
Wow.
That's, Viktor Daniel, when he was about pre-K, he was not even 4 years old. Mm-hmm. So my son was always in school. And that you see, I'm not lying here. This is let me see here if I find. I would see him every lunch. I would pack my sandwich and go to see him every lunch. I had a little bed for him, a pillow. He brushed his teeth. I would not take the lunch. I brought my own. But I saw them, how he developed. He could see me fall asleep. I go back to work. I did this for 2 year.
So every lunch break, you're leaving the shop and you're going to go visit your son at school. What school was that?
Where the college is called the Early Childhood Development.
It's at the Santa Fe Community College? Yeah. Okay.
It's they had one spot open. And actually my wife just dropped them off and I left them, It was good, you have to understand, my son was my only family here. And, he was my pillar. He was my drive. Keep going every day. Every break, there were about 9 to 10 girls around Viktor Daniel. He was really a cute little kid, and his personality, the kids just liked him, I never had any bad intention to anybody except raising a beautiful son, which was a surprise baby. He was born a boy. I was happy, How can you not? He met a guy from Santa Fe who was arrested about 17 times since 2012 and was on probation for bad stuff for 2 months, and he goes and murders my son. He said he will go and kill the kid.
I want to know what the record of the guy that shot him was. Had he been, or I think you had already mentioned this once, he had been arrested before.
17 times.
17 times, I believe, for extortion. This guy
Were any of those violent crimes?
He tried to kill his own family members. He robbed his aunts. He stole the car key. He said he stole his brother's computer. He said he will slice his throat and stuff like that. He always got away. And why killing Victor Daniel, the only smart kid who could have been a friend, who could have freaking taught him something in life? This guy who killed my son was in Albuquerque, living there, always got away, dealing with pistols, all bad stuff. He was a really bad guy. My son maybe tried to become, because of watching Netflix, all those kids watch that guy, that guy from Mexico, what's his name? That guy that's incarcerated, that's a big hero for them, right?
Narcos.
Yeah, Narcos, it's a big problem. They're looking up to those Netflix movies, and what I notice in our youth is very sad. When you ask the kid nowadays, they say, I don't want to live more than 20 years. Where does this come from? This brainwashing culture. I embrace life. I might live as long as my dad, who is 97 this year, who still drives in Switzerland. But you get a secondary loss, when you lose a kid. It's strange, people don't want to associate with you. They think it's your fault, losing a kid.
So sorry, man.
I want to ask society, how do you protect your son when you're working at your workplace? 10-hour days, and you don't know what's going on out there. There is a saying, there's a saying, right? It takes a village to raise your kid. But this village murdered my kid.
And he went from the wall, and I saw him walking really fast towards my car, and I ran right after him. He jumped in my car and tried to take off. I jumped in the car and I got the gear and I put it in park. I slammed it into park and I wrestled the keys from him, and we stayed fighting for the vehicle. My daughter at the time was, I think, 5 or 6, and she came outside crying. She was freaking out. I mean, that situation could have turned really bad really quick, because he was revving the engine. He could have ran into the house, ran into my daughter, went in reverse, took me with him, because I was halfway in the car and halfway out. He ended up waltzing down a couple of houses and then sitting at my neighbor's wall for a few minutes. The cops got there within, I would say, 5 minutes, and he waltzed down the street and the cops did not get him. They said they could not find him.
So I had my RV parked right here at the side of the house, and I've had it there for several years. I never had any problems with it. I was in bed and my dog started barking, and I started hearing like popping sounds, and I was like, what the heck? So I ran out the front and my RV was engulfed in flames.
That's insane.
And it was just popping and making all sorts of noises, and I've had that RV here for years. I never had any problems, and why all of a sudden did it go up in flames?
Yeah, and meanwhile, over down the street, there's more fires being started.
Exactly.
And around the same time, 3 a.m.
But you lost the motor home and you lost the car.
I lost my RV, I lost my BMW, and I lost my GMC, yes.
it's kind of like, okay, well, what's the plus here? Especially when something violates you.
Absolutely.
You know, and I've sort of become more enlightened, I guess is the right word, when this car theft thing happened. You know, I suddenly sort of became aware, and social media and, you know, stepped in. It was like, oh yeah, you know, and happened to me and this and that, and talking to neighbors, because I went around and said, hey, heads up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just over there anymore. It's happening here. And I'd have people say, oh yeah, my car got ransacked, you know, didn't take anything, but I didn't lock it. I forgot to lock it. And, you know, shit was taken or jumbled through. And I thought, and that's it? You just go, okay, that just happens? But never have I been so blatantly violated, if you will. You know, you buy a nice car, you work hard, you buy a nice car, and, you know, I mean, I'm starting to shop now, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want a really good car.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lori, thanks so much for talking to me. So if you could just tell me just real briefly what happened to you. I think you had a vehicle stolen, correct?
That's correct. On a Friday night, I was at a motel, and I packed my car to get out of there early Saturday, and went to sleep. And fortunately, I had my dog with me, not in the car. And I came out the next morning and the car was gone. And I thought, I know I parked my car here, went around the parking lot to see if it was anywhere, and it was not, and it was gone. I was just like in shock at first and disbelief.
That's horrible. Like, come to Santa Fe and get your car stolen and get stranded.
Right. You know, it was just an invasion in my life, and very emotional.
Have you been to Santa Fe since?
But no, I've been really hesitant to go, even though I know I would park at my friend's house and not stay in the community again. But
over the last few years, it's gotten a lot worse. We worked here in Costa Solana, and I think our vehicles have been broken into 2-3 times. I'm in a text group with all the neighbors now, and they're also having the same issues every single night. There's someone trying to open car doors or breaking in, or we also had a homeless camp in the back. I was getting ready to go hunting, and I had 3 or 4 firearms stolen out of my truck. There's 2 still missing, a pistol and a rifle.
That are just out there, who knows where.
Yes. The district attorney actually ended up just giving him 20 hours of community service, and
that almost feels like they didn't want to prosecute him.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with all the gun stuff nowadays, like how are they offering 20 hours of community service and unsupervised probation for, you know, something that serious?
They say, you know, guns are the problem or whatever. No, it's just you constantly have a revolving door of criminals, and that is local. That is national implications, but local here. You know, you can go drive down to Highway 14 into the jail, and you just see all the people walking back to town from the jail.
Well, I mean, you know, it started with the Jeep. That was probably 10 months ago, about a year ago. And they took it right out of my driveway, broad daylight. Our business has been broken into multiple times. Just usually the vehicle's outside, a window break, you know, toolbox jimmied open. But this time they actually, you know, broke down the front door and went in. Interestingly enough, they got mostly personal possessions, a dirt bike that was being stored there. That was one of my employees, laptop computers, a box of checks. It's dramatically different. You know, I had 3 police reports going on at once, because there was also the trailer that got stolen from, a remodel project that I'm doing. You know, and to have all those going on at once, and having 3 insurance claims going on at once, and never having done that in 25, 30 years of adulthood, you know, that's a big difference. And we all talk about it all the time. There's so much so much of it going on right now that you don't feel safe anymore.
No.
I can't even, who was it? One of my friends was telling me, Rhonda was telling me just on Friday that her cousin and her uncle both had their trucks or vehicles stolen out of their driveway. What's disappointing is I feel like I've been engaging in conversations about this multiple times a week, which you didn't used to have to do. So when you called me, I was not surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, another discussion about this problem. I remember growing up in Santa Fe, never locking anything. You didn't lock your front door, you didn't lock your car. You didn't worry about it. Now, I have cameras at my house. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Why do I need cameras on my own property? And I have to lock my front door and I have to lock all my vehicles. It's something that I have to pay attention to. And that was not the case 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing we found, and I don't know what happened, it's really been the last, especially for us, I would say last 6 months, we've seen a real rise in crime and dealing with, and I hate saying it, but it seems that it's, you know, the unhoused. Our homeless population seem to be really struggling lately, and there seems to be a real violent aspect coming up. It's not just panhandling. It's just blatant harassment. We've had muggings. We've had, you know, beatings. We've had this, and it's, I was hesitant to discuss this because I don't want anyone thinking this is a Boxcar thing. It's a Boxcar problem because we're a part of the community. It is a Santa Fe issue by heart, and I understand. You know, it's something that, you know, everyone goes, oh well, it's happening in Ohio, or it's happening in Tennessee, or it's happening in Seattle. What makes me so angry about a statement like that is what you're saying is it doesn't really matter. I feel like it's not fixable, so then we're just going to scapegoat. We can't scapegoat it any longer. It was on a Monday. Great guy came down, had dinner with us, and then left. And when he got to the street level, he was mugged and then seemingly injured in the mugging and hasn't been able to work, hasn't been able to go do any of his activities, skiing.
How long ago was that? Excuse me, how long ago
that
was
was
this?
what, 6 to 8 weeks ago?
Okay, so this is real recent.
Very recent, yeah.
Comes out of the establishment,
yes,
and gets mugged there downtown.
Yes, and I had found out, so we're probably, a block from the plaza, block and a half, and not a city block, you know, Santa Fe block. And so, you know, I was out the other night and witnessed just blatant harassment. I've had, you know, customers, young and old, come to me and tell me they're very concerned about, you know, walking to their car, leaving restaurants, Market Street, the San Francisco Bar and Grill. They've had like 3 or 4 muggings out front and stuff like this. So this is not one corner, one restaurant, one bar type of issue. This is a Santa Fe at whole issue.
And we had a group of homeless men gathered in a circle, and the boombox was raging, and there was alcohol, and, you know, it was quite the scene. And
what time was this?
8:30 in the morning. And one of the guys became very aggressive, and he went after my neighbor first, but I was actually closer to him, and then he came after me. It was right up in my face at least 2 or 3 times. And I was on my way to the shelter, St. Elizabeth shelter, to ask somebody to come out to get some help. They came out and ultimately got the folks to leave.
What was he saying when he was in your face?
You know, if you get up close and you tell me that again, or, you know, just really threatening that he would do harm.
Is that something that has happened more than once? Is this a one-time occurrence?
Oh no, we have a lot of problems in the rail yard, and I think really in understanding the problem in the rail yard, one of the first places to start is about looking at, you know, where we as a community place our services for people who are in mental health and addiction crisis. And what I mean by that are people who are, you know, for example, suffering with untreated schizophrenia, Their addiction has become to such an extreme point that they're really not able to function. And what it means is that they're not able to use the shelters in Santa Fe, like, for example, Pete's Place. And the problem here is that somewhere during the pandemic, our mayor and the current director, St. Elizabeth, decided to use the rail yard as a location for people who were in addiction and mental health crisis. And they set up a program that's called an outreach program at St. Elizabeth, where they didn't let anyone know that they had established the program. And not only did they not let us know, but they actually tried to conceal it.
When you're here at this park and it's, 8 o'clock at night, not even that late, and you're walking through it by yourself, do you feel safe?
No. And Eli, I've been in over 50, if not 75 countries traveling alone. I've been through Africa, Asia, South America, and I can say that being in the rail yard park walking alone at night is not a good idea. So I actually stopped walking in here because the issues were so bad. It was...
But you will get out of dead sleep and you're like looking at a video of a guy in your shop, and 12 minutes later you're face to face with that guy. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. I have mentally ill guys jumping my fence, but nobody really stealing stuff. Then I started putting up cameras and barbed wire and razor wire, and it was just that. But then, probably about 3-4 years after that, I started having real criminals coming in and stealing stuff. Then that same guy stole a neighbor's car, and my video caught him. And you have free reign to do what you want. And if you get caught by somebody like me, you'll go to jail for a day. You'll be back out on doing drugs with an ankle bracelet on, and you don't have to show up to court. Just keep on doing it, because that's our current system.
What do you think is the correlation between homeless people and the increase we've seen in that, and just petty crimes, property crimes, all kinds of crimes, and the rise we've seen in that? What do you think is the relationship there?
So anybody who tells me that a homeless person, they're just down on their luck, whatever. I've been doing, I was a cop for so many years, and then I ran a behavioral health facility with a lot of the homeless people that would come in because they were either court ordered or seeking treatment. Yeah, there's some good people out there that truly want to change, but for the most part, you have people that are just looking for their next fix. They're at the treatment facility because they're court ordered. I've had people who've, committed homicide, trying to get leniency on their court time. They don't give a crap about changing. They just want, less time in jail. And here's my opinion on it. If somebody really wants to change for the better, they're going to. They're going to go out, they're going to find a job, they're going to, figure out a way to make it work. But the homeless people you're seeing are the ones who like being homeless. They like, committing crimes. They like taking advantage of the taxpayer-funded prison system or jail system. Take your pick. But a lot of it is just they are lazy, entitled. They have their drug addiction and they're not willing to change. And so they will go out and commit petty crimes in order to, fund their addiction or just keep doing whatever they want to do.
It's getting worse and worse. Our small town has its problems, manageable problems. Unfortunately, because of our current criminal justice system, the lack of drive from law enforcement and this revolving door when it comes to the same offenders over and over and over again. It's getting out of control, Eli. We have to do something about it. And what I suggest is that we hold those that are in charge accountable for it. A lot of my close friends and family, even myself, been victimized by crime after my retirement. It's getting out of control.
One of the things that we keep hearing, not only from the public, but from officers, is this revolving door of criminal justice. In our society more recently, there's been some ideas and some kind of buzzwords that have been thrown around and injected into our criminal justice system, words like compassionate justice or restorative justice. At the same time, we see that overwhelmingly, most violent offenders have been given chance after chance through one of these programs or something that sounds like that. And then somebody lands up dead or beaten or hurt or raped or whatever the case is. Maybe you've even heard of the phrase, which kind of takes a counter perspective to, I think, some of those programs. That phrase is compassion for criminals is cruelty to the community. The district attorney has great power to choose who to prosecute and who to maybe plea bargain with or who to let go or just who to really throw the book at. How would you say that you've personally made decisions about who to give another chance to, maybe somebody to put them in a program, and versus somebody to rigorously prosecute? I guess I'm just looking for your irreducible minimum value set, how you made those decisions. So you've got a file in front of you, and it's a violent offense. And you're there, and you've got to make a decision because there's offenses all over the place. You can't prosecute everything, I would imagine, with limited resources. I would imagine you have to pick and choose who you're really going to pursue. What's that value set that you would make those decisions on?
Well, let me clarify just because when we look at cases as prosecutors, we have to evaluate the evidence that we have, the witnesses that we have, and how we're going to be able to tell a story to a jury to convince all 12 beyond a reasonable doubt whether or not this person is guilty. Now, there does come a point where somebody is a habitual offender, where clearly they are not willing to go into treatment. That's where we have to start to be smart and say, listen, this is a revolving door. This individual isn't learning. They're just picking up more and more charges. And home burglaries are some of the most dangerous situations, not only to put the people in the house, but also the defendant themselves. Not to mention all of the trauma that comes from it if your family's in the house or you have kids in the house. So there's so many factors that go into play that we take into consideration, or at least I take into consideration. But I try to divert them first, but if there's no hope, or at least I'm not seeing any willingness, then that's when we need to start requesting the courts to incarcerate.
Kills me out of all that is the drugs, and I just keep going back to that. Whoa, bro, come on, man. And I just keep going back to that because I just keep going back to the drugs because it's just such it's just so much of, I think, what the root of so many of the problems that ail our society is, I mean, drugs that are so addictive that they just take over people's lives en masse and turn them into homeless, turn them into criminals just trying to get their next fix, And those things are flowing freely, almost completely unopposed into our community, And it's not even necessarily just what we see on the outside with, people that are breaking into things or, people that are becoming homeless, but it's also in homes of so many families. I know it's been in my home, where you have a loved one that's, doing things, hooked on things.
Yeah, I mean, it's very destructive to community, and that's another problem is kind of this corrosion of the community.
For me, it's like being in an exhaust shop.
I feel like it's been a problem for at least 2 years. And it hasn't slowed down for me. I mean, being in an exhaust shop, I see this craziness every day. You know what I mean? So it's sad, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy. And I don't get why we're still dealing after 2-3 years of cattle converters being stolen. I just don't get that we haven't figured it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
And what I can understand is why our governmental hasn't opened up their eyes to what's going on. Not only with cattle converters theft, but our unfortunate people on the streets. The drugs have been like really crazy in this town. I mean, I don't want to say that they're not trying, but we need to try harder. Our city needs to change, man. You know, I've been here 38 years. I've seen some good and I've seen some bad changes in this town. But the last 6 to 10 years, bad. I mean, what is our mayor thinking? I'm sorry, that's just my thought. What are they doing out there, man? It's like, come on, guys, let's figure it out, right? But, yeah, I don't know.
You know, I got little things here. This was how my son died, okay? He died in this jacket with 10 shots.
He was shot 10 times, huh?
What happened? My son must have heard how he cocked the pistol. My son, he got, see this? He got grazed. He almost made it. He got grazed with the first bullet. He grazed his chest, went through his leg and out the door. Okay, this is only one shot so far missed out of these 10 shots. He shot another one, went through his chest plate, all the way through and stopped in the skin. You can see a yellow dot. I found this 2 years out later when I went to see pictures of the RMI. After these 2 shots, my son tried to get out of the seatbelt. I know because there is blood on the seatbelt. And he shattered my son's arm here on 2 spots, completely shattered. The way my son was found, his elbow was like double elbowed up like this. The bullets, those were 2 bullets, and then another shot through. Injured his lungs and artery a little bit. He started bleeding out. Then this guy, just to show you, okay, this is the blood from the broken arm, okay? This is real, okay?
My gosh.
And he had a black undershirt. It seeped through the black undershirt. So, this was not enough. My son slopped forward. So he shot my son 3 times in the back. See those holes in the back here?
I do see them.
Okay. And then, if this is not first-degree murder, I don't know. He got charged with second-degree murder. But what happened at this point, you know, when people are shot, they don't just drop dead like in the movies, okay, unless you're shot in the head. So this guy who murdered my son, he left the car, opened the driver's door. My son was on the iPhone, called his mom. That's why I know when my son died, it was 10:46.
So he's shot this many times and he tries to call his mom.
He calls his mom. For 10 seconds, she didn't pick up. She was at the shower. It was 10:46. He called Alicia for 3 seconds. This guy goes around. That's why the detective asked me which side did he had his eye watch. He shot him because my son he shot him in a big wound in the eye watch. And I guess where the shot, I couldn't find it. Guess where the shot went? The shot ricocheted and went into this hoodie, okay? The cops never told me that either. When shots miss, they have to go somewhere, okay?
Right.
See his hoodie. The shot went in, out, and then, you know, like an accordion. He had this jacket on, the hoodie here. So the shot went in and out and ended up, because it's double here, ended up in the hoodie, okay? And that was not enough, okay? It was not enough. So the first shot grazed, he got shot in here, he got shot in the upper arm, he tried to get out, he couldn't get out. Then the guy shoots him in the back, he goes around, shoots him 2 more times, then he pushes Viktor Daniel over the center console. Why I know there's a blood stain, my son died over the center console, his head on the passenger seat. There was a link of his gold chain still on the passenger seat because he ripped off one of his little gold chains where he had from his birth. Okay, he sits on top of Viktor Daniel and goes to a drug house. He walks into a drug house and says, "Did you hear the kid that just killed him? Took all his shit." You know, at this point, they only gave me the report, and I couldn't read it. I'm not an autopsy guy, but it says he was shot at left from the center line. I guess what? When he went around, he shot him 1 more time from the left side, all the way through to the liver. That was shot number 10, okay? Nobody showed me the cemetery or the OMI. Nobody told me New Mexico receives 80 dead kids, 80 to 100 dead people with suicide, homicides, or overdose. This is the reality of the OMI. You know, it's labeled there like university laboratory. What it is an awful morgue where young people, normal, healthy people die and they be brought there for autopsy. That's what that is in Albuquerque, the OMI, you know.
I mean, we're driving down Agua Fria. That just reminds me of those elderly people who were just both beat by somebody that tried to come and steal their car. You know? It's crazy. And dude, I mean, it's also crazy how few people actually want to talk to us about this.
I think that's where I was kind of going to go with this is, you know, we are living in a city of fear. And I think that there's fear motivated by a couple different factors. The first is people don't want to talk up because they're worried that the police will not be able to provide them with any safety if they come out with their stories or say this is a drug house on our street because nothing's going to happen. And I don't want reprisal. And I think the more insidious of the two is the fact that people are worried of political reprisal. Right. They're worried that they're going to get canceled by local city government because of the city government's failure to act. Mm-hmm. You know, the biggest problem that we have when it comes to enforcing the law is that the chief of police is usually an appointed position, and he's appointed by the mayor of the city of Santa Fe, which means that's now a political position. When it comes to enforcing the law, when it comes to serving and protecting the community, your job in law enforcement is to serve the community, not serve at the behest of a political entity.
Yeah.
Because then that political entity can dictate how law enforcement is going to be enforced.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem. It's the rule of reciprocity. You know, when the people no longer have control in their own community and it's just handed down to a couple elite political representatives, then that's a recipe for corruption.
Shelly, is there human trafficking in Santa Fe?
There's absolutely human trafficking in Santa Fe. In fact, in Santa Fe, there's a human trafficking aftercare organization run by the Lifelink. And so that program's called Sojourners, and they absolutely care for the trafficking victims that are identified in Santa Fe and the surrounding areas. But it's not only just sex trafficking, there is also labor trafficking. We've had domestic servitude victims that have been identified in Santa Fe, so working with wealthier families out there, and they are kept and they are held in people's houses. You've had sex trafficking victims that absolutely have been on and off some of the compounds in there, but you have sex trafficking happening in all of those hotels in Santa Fe as well. What we haven't seen as much in Santa Fe, we see a little bit more in Albuquerque, is sex trafficking that's happening that's street-based. We see that much more in Albuquerque than we do in Santa Fe. So for us to think that human trafficking isn't happening in Santa Fe or isn't happening here or there or whatever, fools. We're fools if we think that's not the case.
Operations in progress to crack down on human trafficking along the New Mexico border. Today, the governor, along with state police and other local and federal agencies, talked about what's being done. Cristiana Ramos reports from Santa Fe.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham says the main goal of this operation was to stop organized crime and save migrant lives.
A 12-day operation in August led to 91 rescues, 33 stash house busts, and 735 traffic stops, according to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Roughly 20 different agencies were involved in Operation Disruption, targeting human trafficking and organized crime in Doña Ana and Luna County.
I did have a lot of interaction with the cartel. I worked undercover narcotics for 3 years. And we would work operations involving the cartel from Mexico with the drug sales and drug trafficking here in town. And it always had some sort of nexus to human trafficking as well. So yeah, I do have some experience with dealings with the cartel when I was still working as a police officer.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned something that I was going to ask you about. Human trafficking seems like such a horrible thing to even think about. You know, people being used as a commodity. Mm-hmm. You know, I think there's a disconnect between regular citizens living their lives and the knowledge that this is happening here, mm-hmm. that this is happening in our home, in our Santa Fe. You know, what's your sense of how severe this is?
It's pretty severe.
And now, you know, we had some guy that lived up the road that was taking picture of kids. And so we just can't have her out. And then we have people walking up and down the street constantly, drug addicts and, you know, people that are questionable that we just cannot let her outside unless we're right there on top of her.
So with New Mexico Dream Center, we actually have a vision to no longer be needed. And what that means is that we would have eradicated child trafficking here within the state of New Mexico. So the way that we accomplish that is through a 360 view about human trafficking in our state. So that means we look at factors that push people into human trafficking, factors around prevention, looking at what outreach looks like, being able to resource victims that need the support, and how do you have long-term stabilizing factors so that they truly can recover and not become a victim again. And so that's really what our mission is, to be able to look at this problem through all lenses so that we can address it appropriately, aggressively, and long term.
How prevalent do you think this is? You know, because I talk to a lot of people that, when I've had conversations with them, you know, they almost don't believe this is happening. You know, what would you say to somebody who would have the opinion of like, you know, I know that happens every once in a while. I don't believe it's that prevalent. It's certainly nothing that we need to, you know, come up with major policy changes or something like that. But that person that, you know, maybe just doesn't see it and so doesn't really believe that it's there, what would you say to that kind of person with that opinion?
Sure. I would say it's important for that person to understand the models of recruitment for American-born children, because it looks different here in the U.S. than it does in another country. In another country, you'll see children maybe sold by their parents into trafficking, or you'll see children kidnapped. Those types of things don't happen as often in the United States. I mean, certainly there are kidnappings. It's very rare that those kidnappings are actually trafficking motivated. There might be trafficking that results in it, but that's not generally the initial motivation. But what we see are 4 very common models of recruitment into human trafficking, and people don't realize then that those kinds of recruitment models lead to a huge number of children. So one of those recruitment models is actually around homeless youth or kids who are in the foster care system. And so when you look at that, I'm going to just break down some numbers for you. So in 2022, Bernalillo County paid for a needs assessment in our county. And during that, part of the process was a point-in-time count of unaccompanied homeless teenagers in Albuquerque. And they were able to count about 1,200 within a 2-day period, this point in time. 1,200 unaccompanied teenagers. So then they extrapolate from there to say, okay, well, that's one time. We know that that's not all of the kids out there. And so essentially their estimate from this Bernalillo County paid for survey is that it's likely there are between 5,000 and 7,000 homeless teens in Albuquerque within a year. When you look at the numbers for Albuquerque, they talked about Santa Fe. So Santa Fe was absolutely mentioned in this. And the estimate for Santa Fe, sorry about that, was 1,400 to 1,700 homeless teens, unaccompanied homeless teens. Okay, so that's a big number. You're like, well, what does that have to do with human trafficking?
Huge number.
Let me tell you what it has to do with human trafficking. Kids who are vulnerable on the street do not have the same kinds of resources as adults. That homeless teen cannot get food stamps for themselves. They can't check themselves into a hotel or motel. They most likely do not have a New Mexico ID or driver's license. And so they can't check even into homeless shelters. They have to go to a specific homeless shelter, right? So youth homeless shelters, 2 in Albuquerque, 1 in Santa Fe. You have to have permission to enter those homeless shelters per Children, Youth, and Families Department policy. You have to have permission and be signed in by your parent or guardian. So if you don't have contact with your parent or guardian, you cannot get homeless resources. So what we've done is we've made these barriers for children to be able to even get into resources. But you know who doesn't have barriers for those kids? Our traffickers. In 2017, I worked with 3 young ladies who were between the ages of 19 and 23. All 3 of them had been trafficked as unaccompanied under 18-year-old teenagers. 2 of them had run away from abusive families. 1 had been kicked out by their family and wasn't allowed to return home. All 3 of them had been trafficked from the same corner in Albuquerque, but they all had different traffickers. So we have predatory traffickers in our city looking for homeless kids, okay? So we haven't done a study about that because New Mexico's not that great at counting things. But you know who has done a study is New Jersey. And so New Jersey worked with several universities and an organization called Covenant House that offers services to minor victims of sex trafficking and homeless youth, which is a big part of our population here at New Mexico Dream Center. And what they were able to do is they found that 1 in 3 homeless kids end up in a sex trafficking situation that they cannot exit. So that means that trafficker has come in and has been able to pull them into a relationship and they can't exit. And then 1 in 5 will exist by what they would call survival sex, which essentially means that they're doing sex because they have no other way to survive. And that falls under the federal definition of human trafficking. And so if we look at our numbers then in Albuquerque, so that perhaps 5,000 to 7,000 kids. So we do that same kind of mathematical formula of 1 in 3 and 1 in 5. You are looking at 1,000 kids who are being trafficked in Albuquerque. And so when we say that it's small or it's not happening, what we don't realize is it just looks different in the United States than the way it looks in movies. And so it's important for us to know that.
You know, it's interesting to think about how organized the network is in New Mexico.
It's very organized. And we know from working with this population that there are some very specific rings and routes that are used. And so we know that Albuquerque is part of a route that includes Denver, Albuquerque, Salt Lake City, Utah, Compton, California. So we know that that's part of the ring. We know that in looking at that, we see another ring that comes up through the border from Mexico and generally will go through like the oil fields right there on the Texas, New Mexico, the Permian Basin, and will come that way. What we've seen is one of the models of trafficking that's huge in New Mexico is gang-related trafficking. When you think of a gang, we've got tons of them we know in New Mexico where we've got like cartel, we've got East and West Coast like Crips and Bloods, and then we've got, you know, the prison-related gangs, neighborhood gangs, like just gangs throughout our state. And gangs like any other community organization has to raise money. And so they've traditionally raised money, as you probably know, through the sale of drugs and the sale of arms, the sale of weapons. Well, you can only sell drugs and arms so many times, but you can sell a person over and over and over again. And we have so many young girls who come from just really difficult backgrounds who want to be in a gang, because this is a protective measure. And especially if you're in a neighborhood that is run by a gang, it could be life-saving for you to be involved in that gang. So trafficking of girls that are wanting to be in gangs has been a huge thing that we have seen in New Mexico, because it brings much more income for that person. There are fewer penalties in our state. You get more time if you traffic drugs or weapons than you do if you traffic a person. And so it is safer for the gang. There is loyalty with the gang. And so we see that this is a way where there's just a huge number of young people being trafficked who have been part of this. The youngest person we've worked with who was trafficked by a gang was 14 years old.
Yeah, and it also seems like people kind of just start to become apathetic to it. There was this one lady that I talked to, I don't know, maybe like 3 days ago, and she was talking about her car getting rummaged through as if it was just like the new normal. And I was telling her about my experiences where I live and how that happens multiple times a year, and you know, they've broken into my home and stuff, and her response to that was just kind of, oh yeah, that's happened to me. They go through my car all the time. But anyway, and I'm like, and I stopped her and I said, hang on just a second, because that kind of sounds like you're just like accepting that, like that's fine now.
That's part of the problem, right? Is this level of cognitive dissonance, where they do just accept that as the normal. No, it's just the new normal. Crime is happening everywhere. You know, this is like average. You know, crime is on the rise everywhere in the United States. And then I'll ask people, I said, you know, why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that's the case here in Santa Fe? Oh, it's just happening everywhere.
I talked to one gas station attendant a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that he had been assaulted just taking the trash out twice in the last month. I mean, imagine being a gas station attendant, you're doing your job, you're getting ready to close down, you're taking the trash out, and you just get assaulted, you know?
And it doesn't, nobody wants to work at these gas stations now, because they're not going to be protected if they protect themselves. The company will fire them. They're told not to intervene if somebody steals. You know, nowadays you could just walk into a Target and you could just steal shit. Mm-hmm. And they're not even going to prosecute.
What do you think about the crime stats that the police department and the city put out? You know, obviously there's a benefit to reporting those to the feds. Do you think we can rely on the numbers that they're giving us?
No, they're underreported. They are being underreported. As a matter of fact, there were some articles in our local newspapers about statistics being underreported. It's not doing us, the citizens, of any favors. Well, the only benefit is a political benefit to those numbers. It's just politics.
We as citizens, if elected leaders are not doing what they're supposed to do, we need to stop voting them into office, you know, term after term after term. Vote them out. Get somebody else that is going to come in and do something about the problems that these cities in New Mexico face. You know, and you know, this is the same thing in Congress. You know, they do nothing, and the thing is that we keep voting them in year after year after year, and some of these leaders, I wouldn't even have them lead a Girl Scout troop to sell Girl Scout cookies in front of a post office.
Well, there is a cognitive dissonance that goes on with politics, because we live in a day and age where everything is very polarized.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat, you can only have liberal values. If you're a Republican, you can only be conservative. There's no space for any moderation anymore.
Well, I think that it's important that as a community, we look at, recently we've had the Santa Fe, New Mexicans editorial staff describe the crime and trash in our neighborhoods as crisis. And our governor was saying that we had an obvious lack of leadership in Santa Fe, and the importance of getting our city leadership to listen and make changes in the policies and what they're doing, and deliver some results. And results are quite different than a press conference. We're expecting to see an improvement in public safety, not verbiage about what they're going to do. And I think we're all tired of the substitution of PR for delivering results. And the real issue in the rail yard has been created by our current mayor's policies.
As somebody who's downtown a lot and, at all hours,
Yes.
Do you feel safe walking around downtown, if you get out of, an establishment at 11, 12 o'clock?
I had a friend say this one time, and I always thought it was really interesting, and I didn't understand it until then. And somebody had asked him about going to Mexico. He's a world traveler. He's not, naive, to say the least. And he's like, I'd rather my girlfriend walk around in Mexico by herself, and I'd feel safer than her having to walk in Santa Fe. This is getting serious, and it's getting serious quicker. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be much more difficult. It's almost like they're waiting for it to get as bad, where you have to come up with a solution instead of trying to solve it now.
So, is Santa Fe a safe city?
I would say no. That is why I don't live in the city. And I was very adamant about that when I was looking for a house. I'm like, I am not going to live in the city limits. It is not a safe place. I've been to too many calls where somebody's camping in my front yard, or they take a dump in their front yard, or, hey, I need this person trespassed.
And now we have like cartel violence now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they still live there, but I used to know where active cartel members, I knew where their houses were. I could tell you what kind of cars they drove. It's not unheard of. And Espanola was just as bad, and you get a lot of those guys down here as well.
Weird action going. So anyway, it's all coming to a head, and I don't have the resources for it to accommodate this spike in crime like you guys are witnessing and seeing and hearing from everyone else, because I know it's not just us. I worry about the tourists. I worry about something vile happening and hitting the papers from someone from Houston, and Santa Fe is a crime-riddled town or whatever. Just something horrific happening. I mean, that's all it takes, right? Just something that is an eye-opening, shocking story. And next thing you know, we've got a black eye in our tourism, in our main industry. And it's close. It's close. If something's not done, something weird's going to happen. And that's the stuff. That's what I fear. Something weird is going to happen. And then again, you can't ask these people who work in these industries to do that, to go to work and then get out and feel safe walking around downtown. I just, you know what I mean? Those are the people that take care of all the front desk people, all the guys who work valet, all the housekeeping staff, all the late night servers and bartenders and blah, blah. I mean, that's hotels. All those people get out work late. And if they're not safe, I don't know how else we're gonna protect our industry. It's about protecting the people that are the stewards of our industry, right? And we're not. So I don't know. We got to figure something out.
Yeah.
I just wish that we could go out in public and not have to fear for our lives.
Good evening, New Mexico. What started as a peaceful Sunday morning quickly turned into chaos right in the heart of Santa Fe.
Yeah, all the events along the plaza had to be canceled, of course, including the last day of the Santa Fe Fiesta.
These women were trying to enjoy their annual trip to Santa Fe. Instead, they say they've never seen anything like what they witnessed Sunday.
Anything can happen anywhere. We know that. But we're like, not Santa Fe.
It's just really surprising to get down here and and a place that I sort of assume that I'm safe and it's quiet and peaceful, but it doesn't really feel very stable or safe, and there just feels like a lot of chaos down here right now.
This is the second officer-involved shooting in just a week. Wednesday, Santa Fe police officers shot Jesus Rafael Contreras in response to a suicide call. So far, there's no new information in that case. In Santa Fe, Monica Logroño, KOB4.
Don't you think it's funny that out of us like looking into rise in crime and homelessness and all that kind of thing in our city, don't you think it's interesting that like even with the knowledge that we have as just civilians, we can take people to, you know, or even police to where they sell drugs or they peddle drugs, even drug houses and stuff like that. So you gotta ask the question, then why are those things still in existence? Like, why don't they deal with it?
I think it goes back to like, you know, this is beyond the police. This is beyond the chief of police. This comes down to the district attorneys, the DAs, prosecutors. This comes to city council. This is the mayor of the city of Santa Fe, and then the governor, and then at a higher level than that. Law enforcement is dictated by the politics of it. And right now, these politicians don't seem to really care much about cleaning up this city. I mean, we got brown water on Agua Fria, we got bridges collapsing, we got homeless everywhere, you got fentanyl up and down Cerrillos Road, you got kids overdosing on fentanyl, you got violent crimes taking place, you got shootings, homicides, domestic violence, and they're shutting down key infrastructure around here, power outages, and everybody's saying, yeah, we're good. We're just this is the average. This is the new normal. There's nothing to see here.
Kerry Morrissey and Mrs. Moss, very intelligent ladies, come in and said, you know what? They said, you know, Victor, we cannot change the first degree murder because of COVID. And, you know, we can go two ways. We come to a place, either we accept, we go to a trial, which if there's one not case in the jury, you might lose, or we accept the plea deal. You know what we're going to do? For second degree murder, it's like 15 years. And for this guy having an illegal weapon, another year. And for hiding my son's, tampering with evidence, hiding your son for 17 days, another 5 years. So from 21 years, we're going to do 16 plus 5. So he has to do 16 years. When he comes home, he is on parole and probation 5 years. And for violent crimes, they have to do at least 85%. So he is in there now 4 years and 2 months, and he has to do at least another 9 years. So he will be maybe out by 13 and a half years. That's my calculation. I don't really know where he is at. That's another thing they never told me. They said he will be incarcerated in New Mexico. I don't get any satisfaction about this. But there were other people at the drug house and say, go kill the kid. There were other people, you know, to blame on. But it's not like we're in Wisconsin or somewhere where there's a really thorough investigation, you know. My son's skateboard was missing. Detectives say, yeah, I know the family. I can ask his aunts. You know, he gave it away right there. That he was, you know, the detective was covering up for this guy because his friend's hijito, not supposed to be in jail, right? Because he got out every time. But anyway, at least this time, you know, this guy was social media. You know, it came to the day where it was the sentencing. And, you know, this guy was seen on the camera in jail when he had visitors. Somehow he had crime scene photos from his attorney. He was still showing off how he killed my son. He was still bragging about it. And you know what really gets me in this society, this world? when he was sentencing, you know, I had a good team, you know, my counselor. I did my speech, I took photos, I prepped. I had Kerry smart ladies there. What really got me, because of COVID, not everybody could go inside, but I had a big monitor in the hallway. This guy who murdered my son had a whole fan club there, okay? It's almost like it's cool to murder somebody, and as more gruesome as it is, it was a heinous crime, as better it is. This really bothered me, okay? You know, I finally got my son a headstone. His mom doesn't go to the cemetery, nobody, he's like already forgotten. But I got him a nice headstone, as big as I was allowed to do it. You know, a nice headstone, a polished black granite from India, you know, with all his pictures on there. But I got this beautiful kid here, you know, Caroline Victoria. And when I went to the fiestas, a lady came up to me and she said, you know what? I've never seen a kid like this. It has beautiful gray blue eyes. This is the most beautiful kid in the whole universe. This is this baby I have.
Wow, she's beautiful.
She is beautiful, and she's a little flirt too. When I was at his house, she was just the cutest thing.
She started walking last 2 days.
Yeah.
Today,
and you're remarried, correct?
Yeah, I got married to my partner, Laura, also Hispanic lady. With her, she helped me raise Victor Daniel. I'm with her since 2010. You know, I got married, and she never had a baby. And it's funny how it goes, you know. We're both over 50. She has her first baby. We're starting all over. You can laugh about it. I'm at 75. I will still claim child credit for my taxes.
Well, it's.
But you know, this is not. People, you know, are too negative about kids. It's beautiful. She gives me so much. I called her Caroline Victoria, just like the song Caroline. You know, it was spring, became summer, you're growing stronger, and your pain runs off your shoulder. I played this song when my daughter was born at the St. Vincent Hospital. You know, we had a little party with Dr. Goodman, and it was a Christmas baby, Christmas Eve, the 24th. I didn't plan this. This is my little Santo Niño. Send a little message. She's probably going to be the next governor.
I hope so. She'll be a good one. Much better than the one we have now.
I'm of the mind that, you know, when you look at communities around the country where crime has really gotten crazy, you see this curve where it started getting bad, and then it seems like it takes a fraction of the time to just go from like getting worse to just like horrible. You know, that I think a lot of city leadership assumes that curve is something that's going to be consistent, and it's not. It starts getting worse and worse and worse until before you know it, it's just out of control. And I think that Santa Fe is on the cusp of that. I think Santa Fe is on the cusp of where we can bring it back, where if we were to, you know, change policies and do things differently, we could pull it back. But if we don't do that, I think that it's going to get worse, and I think it's going to be a surprise how fast that can happen.
you.